It takes courage to actually show up and be present in your feelings and in your body. And if you are going to open to, experiencing sexuality as a part of your spiritual path or as a part of your divine nature, then you have to be prepared for those moments because of the greater healing that we're all a part of.
You're listening to the Almost 30 podcast, hosted by Krista Williams and Lindsey Simcik. Almost 30 started as a conversation about the transition from our 20s to our 30s. But then we realized life is full of transitions. So we expanded our mission.
We are an intuition-led, wellness-focused lifestyle podcast that promises to deliver authentic conversations, diverse points of view, and insights rooted in optimism, growth, and intention. The Almost 30 Nation community is a group of purposeful dreamers who are smart, passionate, and always seeking the full potential in every aspect of their lives.
At Almost 30, we're making magic together. We dream it,
and then we do it.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Almost 30 podcast.
Here we go.
Hello and welcome to Almost 30 podcast. So glad you're here.
So glad you're here. Y'all, I don't know if you know we're on YouTube now, and it's actually a mindfuck to be watching yourself in the monitor.
It's exhausting.
And this is...
It's so Bush League. Do you remember college and everyone be like, yeah, that's Bush League. It's very Bush League. And my hair's brown.
I know, it's great.
Yo, I'm brown.
I love it.
Brown is in town.
Mine
I asked Justin the other day, I was like, Justin's my fiance. I'm like, do you like my hair? Like, what do you like my hair like back then? Now he's like, oh, I think I like it blonde better. I was like, you don't know enough about life to know that you never tell the person that you like it better when it was different than it is now.
I think guys are so funny in that, like, they don't make the connection between what the answer that you need to hear right now and their own truth, and they like kind of don't jump that gap.
Honestly.
They're like, actually, I like you blonde, and you're like, what? Like, I'm brown forever now, and he's like,
And the other day, our kittens we adopted 2 kittens from Stray Cat Alliance in Los Angeles. And at night, they always come on me. At 3 a.m, they're always like jumping on me. They're meowing. They're like, and they do pussyfooting, like, because they're actually missing their mom because their mom abandoned them when they were very little. And I told Justin, I was like, it's so weird that they always come on me. Like, they're always pussyfooting on me. They're just on me. He's like, I think it's because I'm too bony. And I was like, oh, what? Sir? I was like, what are you?
quarantine's going well.
No, honestly, we're actually very not well. Literally the other day I was in the car. I'm like, I was driving and I was just thinking, I'm like, oh, I feel so disconnected to him. I feel we're not syncing and we're not connecting like deeply. And I was like going on, I'm like, okay, I need to like express my truth. And I was thinking for like 15 minutes. And then I finally was like stopped at a parking stop or a stop sign. And then I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, so yeah, I should probably pay for his rent this month. And I was like, yo, what the kind of like fucked up brain do you have where I was like, I'm upset and I need to speak my truth. And then I'm like, I should probably pay for his rent. Like, yo, I was like, whoa.
But that's women. We want to take care.
100%.
We also want to self-analyze.
Yes.
And make sure we're doing the work.
Yes.
I mean, that's generalizing, but generally that's how it goes. Yeah, I was like, what are you talking about? You're going to pay for his rent. Like, I was like, this wasn't even in the zeitgeist. It was like, you just need to tell him how you feel. Yes.
Not like...
It's, and I'm curious to know if people out there listening are experiencing this, where the fact that we are in quarantine and we're around, whether it's loved ones, family, friends, partners, siblings, way more often than you're used to, is it actually not helping with communication?
Yeah.
Because it's like almost too much energy like together. Sometimes I feel that way because this is what it is. I don't have enough time by myself to know how I actually feel.
Preach, honey. Preach it.
I don't know how I feel. So then like, we'll have like a deep conversation. I'm like, can I have like 15 minutes? Because I actually I'm gonna sound like a fucking idiot right now. And I need to like take a lap. Yeah. I mean,
I watched Glennon Doyle posted a cute video of Abby, her wife. And Abby was saying, she's like, we've been together so much. We're side by side, but we're not connecting deeply. And we're not, just And women know. It's so funny because women know exactly.
Lesbians get it. I mean,
lesbians get it. Lesbians get it, first and foremost. But also just as a woman, you know when you're connected. It's like a very nuanced thing that men understand. A lot of men understand, but a lot of men don't know on the surface what the nuances of feeling connected is. So it's just such a feminine thing. And I saw that and I was like, yeah, that's literally the truth. That's literally how I feel. That's like, yeah, I haven't had time alone at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Sean's leaving soon. He's like, I think you're going to have a great time. Like, honestly. I think you're going to enjoy it. And I was like, no, we're sad. And then I'm like, actually,
honestly,
I'm going to enjoy a little bit of it.
Honestly, I'm like, we're doing quiet hours at home. I'm like, it's no talking. I'm like, no talking.
Oh God. Yeah. I would love to know how you guys are doing on that realm. And I was going to say, like, with relationships too, like there are those like waves and seasons, you know, and like cycles of just like, yeah. And I think what's kind of heartbreaking is like when you have seasons of being super connected and then you're not as connected for a little bit. It's like, what's happening? What is wrong? And of course there are things to like improve and, you know, things to work on. But I think that's why it's so hard, because you'll have like a great season and then you compare it. You're like, wait, why isn't it like that anymore? I remember doing that like so much in my relationships. Like when I was younger, it was more just like, we're not having sex anymore. And now,
honestly, because the whole gauge was like sex, honestly. Exactly. Like, we're not having sex 12 times a day. Like, what's wrong with me? You must think I'm disgusting. Dude. And it was always like so like stupid. Gosh,
so stupid.
It's very interesting. At first we were really thriving and now we're not thriving at all.
You're not alone, I don't.
Yeah. And now it's just the fully sunk in of us being, it's like we're back in quarantine again. You know, we're kind of, it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I think there's this underlying questioning of like, where should we like live? Where should we like, you know what I mean? There's just like so many things where you're like, oh, like I feel unsettled. I know it's because there's a pandemic, but there's also just other questions about life in general and what we thought it was going to be and how it's ending up different. But hopefully the hope is that it's better. But yeah, it's a lot individually and collectively. Anyway,
I need a damn break. So I booked a hotel by myself the second week of August.
Good.
Hotel Joaquin.
Yeah, it's the best.
Come chill.
It's the best. Or don't come chill.
Don't come chill.
No,
don't find me. Not cheap, but whatever.
Yeah, I know.
Mama needed to get out.
I'm really excited today. Alexandra Roxo is on the pod. Her new book is out today. Fuck Like a Goddess.
Yes.
Heal Yourself, Reclaim Your Voice, Stand in Your Power. She's been working on this book for a long time. And if you followed us, you know that we've had Alexandra on before. We've done events with Alexandra. And she's just like our divine feminine guru. And she's just such a beautiful storyteller as well. I really, you know, if you follow her on Instagram, simply like you'll just be blown away by her writing. And I learned so much from her as she like really vulnerably moves through her own life highs and lows. So
yeah, she's awesome. It was cool too when we did that workshop with her. You know, we have the workshop on the shop now, but just seeing the women, like even if it was digital on Zoom, Alexandra bringing them through the process of peeling back a lot of the conditioning that they had been through noises, through movement, through meditation, through music was so profound.
Yeah.
You know, it was such profound healing. And I think that is an offering for us now in quarantine. You know, this can be a really healing time. So to really dig into topics like we talk about with Alexandra, whether it's sexuality or femininity or the patriarchy or the conditioning that we've been through or sex, now could be a really good incubatory period for you to like really dig into things that you want to learn or apply to your life, you know, for the next couple of years.
Yeah. And it was really nice too, just last thing on that workshop, like where you can do these practices in like the privacy of your own home. And I think some of them are a little bit uncomfortable when you do them at first, whether it's breath work or movement or just like releasing of sounds and emotions. But I think, you know, that's also a gift of this time, being home more and being able to just like do these practices on a more regular basis because we're not running around.
Yes.
So
yeah, we were in our interview today that we did earlier. I was sitting there and we were talking to her and I was listening very intently, but I was also thinking in the back of my head, like, oh, this is my incubation year. This is like the year I'm going to learn everything and just to dig into everything and then like clear it out for the years after. So it's like very honed. You know, it's very hard right now for people to step into their power at this time. Actually, no, it's not. That's actually not true at all. Some people are very much so stepping into their power, but for some, it can be a little bit more challenging because of the ways of the world. You know, people are being very tested. So it's just like, oh man, I'm just going to accept this incubation.
Yes. Well, I think that's like the power of it, accepting it so that like it can actually take root. Because I think people want to just like rush through it. Just like, you know, other like challenging seasons. It's like, no. For some reason, we're experiencing it in the way that we're experiencing it. And so, yeah, what can we kind of plant the seeds now for?
Got to go through what you grow through.
Honestly, you got to feel what you need to heal it.
Lindsey got a tarot reading. I was not pleased with it. About almost 30.
Although I thought it was good. Eventually it was good.
I want all major arcana. I want all like the wheel. I want all like the world. I want all of the big boys. I don't want any of the like 3 of swords.
I mean, I think it's speaking to this year.
It's true.
Of just like tediousness and, you know, kind of
send it back.
Getting it focused. But yeah, I think you guys are really going to enjoy this episode. You can learn more about Alexandra on her website, alexandraroxo.com. Again, her new book, Fuck Like a Goddess, is out now. So you can order it off of her website. She's on Instagram at Alexandra Roxo. Before we dig in, we have a few things coming up with Almost 30. Our new Paradigm Workshop series continues. We have Brie Melanson this Thursday, actually.
Yeah. Aliens, her abduction stories. So if you're interested in anything outside of, you know, what maybe you're normally exposed to in the spirituality realm, Brie is going to really dig into aliens, the aliens that she channels. She's going to do a channeling and then talk about the times that she's been abducted, what happened to her, what upgrades she got, what light codes she got. So this is going to be so fun and interesting and just like, I cannot wait.
Yeah, I cannot wait. A really unique workshop you won't find anywhere else. And then we released our merch yesterday. So we collaborated with Danny of Daisy LA. This is a sustainable, eco-friendly, slow fashion brand. She's also an interior designer and she does everything. Graphic designer. She designs clothes. She does art, like very cool art. And so we did a line with her. And this is just really about empowering y'all. So, you know, the ethos of Almost 30, that you are not alone. We have some fun, cheeky sayings as well. But all of the graphics are designed by Daisy with our inspo in mind. And we know you guys are going to love it. So we have sweatshirts and t-shirts. All are soft as hell.
The softest.
Organic cotton.
Yes.
Made in LA.
Non-toxic.
This was really important to us. So you can shop at shopalmost30.com right now. All right. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Enjoy this episode.
F-U-C-K, like a goddess. Did you know that was going to be your title?
My original title was How to Heal Your Shit and Fuck Like a Goddess, which is a little intense-er, actually.
It's so true.
It's so funny. You write like a book proposal and no one tells you like, hey, just by the way, you should forecast who you're going to be in 3 years.
Wow.
You know, like, and really consider, is this the person I am 3 years from now? That being said, like, Fuck Like a Goddess, I feel it works and I really love it. And also I love the subheader, which is heal yourself, reclaim your voice, and stand in your power. And I like the word fuck. I think it's like a really juicy word.
I love when you say it.
I know.
Jesus Christ.
Pause.
I know, honestly. Oh my God. You're like, so you say fuck again? Just a podcast of you saying that. Yeah, there's something to the confronting nature of cuss words. You know, when you say fuck like a goddess, it's so confronting, and that's almost the point. And I feel like books that have that confronting nature often do well because they generate the interest to allow the confrontation to happen.
No bullshit.
Yes.
Yeah. And I feel like the word fuck, it's like, having sex sounds so like clinical.
Yeah.
And, like making love sounds like, yeah, exactly.
Something your 15-year-old boyfriend told you he wants to do.
Oh my God. You had a nice 15-year-old boyfriend.
Oh my gosh.
But there's something about like owning the word fuck. It feels like two things coming together to create a third thing. It feels like a merging of just like, it has so many layers, right? Like fuck off, like fuck me, like fuck that. Like it feels like a bit of a vortex. So I like that about it, that it's like, when I chose that title, it's like, what if you like made love to life? What if you came into communion, like divine communion, as like this divine being with everything, your pain, your pleasure, your wounds, your truth? Like, what if it all just like made love to you and opened you instead of like trying to control life or control the moment? Or so when I feel into that fuck like a goddess, it's just like the goddess is like nature and sunshine and volcanoes and like the fucking pandemic moving through, you know, like even though that, I guess it wasn't naturally made, but things moving through our bodies as a, you know, kind of like a big ecosystem. So yeah, obviously the word fuck means many things to me.
And when I think of you, like the first word is goddess.
Yeah.
But I do want, because I think we throw that word around a lot. Sometimes I'm like, oh, you're a goddess. You're a goddess. But I really like feel it in my cells when I say it about you. I'm wondering like what that word means to you.
Yeah. Thanks for asking that. Because I do like feel like the word goddess without the word fuck would be kind of cheesy. I'm not going to lie. Like if my book was just called like, you know, dance like a goddess or something like that.
Embody your inner goddess.
Yeah, because like that word has a stigma of like goddess circles and like women in the 60s and 70s, like wearing flowing white gowns. And like, that's obviously not me, but not everyone knows that. But I do think that the word goddess is like it's divinity. It's how the divine feminine moves through our human bodies, like how we are connected to something that came before and will come after us. So that part of it makes it divine, that it's not just in this human moment in the here and now, but that it has some sort of like a mysterious creation that is part of something that's bigger than us, that we're connected to each other, right? As women or as humans. And so like the goddess is the face of the feminine as she moves through us infinitely in all of her textures and all of her changing weathers and all of her archetypes and stories and narratives, like that it's all in us. It's all moving through us. And our human self is like our beautiful temporal self that will die, you know, and then turn to dust. And like, but there is perhaps an essence of us that is forever, you know, and that for me to call that forth in the feminine is a part of what I think is really necessary on the planet today. As much as even that has, you know, controversy and like kind of taboo around gender. And like, I still firmly believe that there are thousands of years of elements of the feminine that have been cut out of our modern world, our world in general, that need to be reclaimed, whether we're men, women, non-binary, it doesn't matter. Like these, like I have a womb and I can procreate, and there are qualities that are associated with that nature that I am. And there are qualities of the earth, of like nurturing and not killing each other, not killing the earth, you know, of protecting each other, protecting our young, protecting our land.
Yes.
And these are the things that have been kind of eradicated by the patriarchy, along with so much else, which I talk about in the book.
Oh, did you do like a little history?
Yeah, I talk about, I mean, I talk about many things. I talk about lineage, and I talk about my sort of my background and my whiteness and my socioeconomic, like sort of where I'm coming from this book from. So there's like a lot of kind of, you know, getting into things. And then, yeah, I talk about why our female bodies were treated in the way that they have been, why we sort of got wrapped in this greater cultural narrative of like, we're only lovable if we're thin and we're pretty, and we'll put so much time and energy into that, and why our sexuality got hidden and told that it was dirty and like our period dirty, and why as women we got kind of banned from the churches, and our relationship to the earth got banned from like, our lives. Like all of that. I do talk about all of that in the first part of the book, like why it's so important right now that we reclaim all that. It seems so obvious,
Yeah, but I think especially the stuff with like religion and stuff is so deeply entwined. It took me a while to be like, wait, why is this way for so many reasons? But can you talk a little bit about that? What is the history behind, say, for, the thinness and the having your body look a certain way? When was that narrative like implanted in the feminine?
Well, I will say I'm definitely not like a historian per se in this, but I have done quite a bit of research. In terms of like what I know about Christianity is that's the background that I grew up in. And the archetype and the story that I like to look at is like, okay, how are women represented in the Bible? And I'll circle back around to your question and how that relates to the here and now. But, the women represented in the Bible is like the Virgin Mary, and a virgin actually has historical roots in not being a woman who's never had sex, but a woman who is sovereign unto her own. And that kind of got misconstrued over time, or it's one interpretation. And then there's the other character of Mary Magdalene, who was portrayed as a whore, right? Which over time we've read in many different books that is a portrayal that was chosen again, right? So there's in this sort of Christian religion, there's this polarization of women. You either are a virgin or a whore. You either a good girl or a bad girl, and that's been sort of, if you look at movies, songs, it's something that's been so deeply entrenched in the narratives that it's like most of us had to choose. Now, if you're a good girl, you're going to choose to be pretty and quiet and thin and small, and you want to be likable, right? Like you want to be good. So I think that it kind of all stems from that, right? You imagine this like good girl, Virgin Mary.
It's the Madonna whore complex.
Yeah.
That Freud talked about.
Yeah. Yep. And that's like, it's like in our cell tissue, like it, as a woman, like to hold both of those poles is intense, to hold them both publicly is intense. Like, could you be both of those things on any given day? And could you, like release your desire to be seen as good? And, it's a big one. It's a hard one. It's so deeply in us. We're like, no, but I want to do good, but I want to be seen as good. I think that the thinness works on different levels. There's like just becoming smaller, taking up less space in the world, which is like a very spiritual and energetic thing. It's like, as women, if we take up less space in the world, then there's more space for men or like, kind of oppressive systems. If you look back, like at statues of goddesses, or maybe you even look back to Greece or whatever, like the female bodies weren't manicured. They weren't small. Actually, they were like really luscious and rich. I'm not sure exactly the exact point that thinness started being of high value. I definitely grew up in the 90s, so I saw and I experienced growing up during like the Kate Moss time, which really heavily impacted me. And I think that if we would have grown up maybe even like in the 50s, we would have been accepted to have like a little bit more curves in us. So I think the narrative around the female body has changed over time as trends and fashion and media dictated. So, I mean, I think that those of us who grew up in like the 90s, 2000s, maybe just got kind of the short end of the stick that like, oh shit, I incarnated during the time where like I'm supposed to be really skinny in order to be lovable or in order to be considered up to the beauty standard or whatever. So I think that piece is maybe independent of religion. I don't think necessarily like that the religion or spiritual piece dictated like, oh, our thinness, but I think there's something about wanting to take up less space in general. A big, juicy, luscious body takes up more space in the world. It calls more attention. It speaks of sex. It speaks of earth. It speaks of ripeness. And I think that the Protestant bit just kind of like, we know that's like really tempting. Like, like a ripe, fecund, like luscious woman is so tempting. Like we need to cover her and quiet her and kind of numb her down and dumb her down, which you don't see necessarily like in maybe like some Latin American or Catholic space, but I think Protestant specifically, and I grew up in Protestant church. So in my book, I'm like very clear, like I grew up in the Bible Belt. And everybody's experience is very different depending on the culture that you grew up in. So your experience of your own body is different depending on that. But I know that from working with thousands of women, I know there are thousands, probably millions of women who are still in a battle with their body. And statistics show this. And I talk about that in my book too. How much money and how many people are suffering still around their body as one thing.
Yeah, it's huge.
Definitely. I'm not sure about you, but I need a little extra something to enjoy my water. And I was so happy when I found Zolt. So Zolt is a CBD drink mix, and they have these adorable little individual packets called Mixie Sticks. And they have 20 milligrams of CBD in them. It's really portable. I bring them with me everywhere, and I can have them throughout the day. They have different flavors and different formulations for whether it's morning, midday, or evening. And these flavors are delicious. I'm pretty picky when it comes to flavors. I actually just had the Rise this morning. It is like a honey tea. It's so freaking good. But Zolt is full, and they really mean full, of antioxidants, which is really important. So it's protecting your skin and body from free radicals that cause damage. And it's all organic. I spoke to the founder of Zolt, and it was just really cool to hear from him, like, the importance of CBD in his life and everyone he knows, and how passionate he is about making this product and getting into the hands of people who really want to feel better. And last night I took the Dreamy, which is a formulation for when I go to bed. And it was the best night's sleep I've had in a very long time. And I felt really refreshed the next morning, not tired or groggy. So for our listeners, I'd love for you to try Zolt. Let me know which flavor you tried and how you're liking it. It's heyzolt.com/almost30. That's HEYZOLT.com/almost30. And then use the code almost30 at checkout for 25% off your first order. That's an insane discount. 25% off with the code almost30 when you go to heyzolt.com/almost30. Super important that we stock our cabinets and our bags with the best, most healthy bars, whether it's on the go or during the day as you're working from home and you need just a bit of nourishment. Go Macro has you covered. I've been a Go Macro fan for like a long time. I've always had them in my bags, whether I was teaching Soul Cycle or running around New York City. And now in LA, I have it stocked in my cabinet. These bars are ones that I trust. And that's hard to say in this world where there are so many bars to choose from. I really trust this company. They are certified organic, vegan, gluten-free, kosher, non-GMO, clean, raw, and soy-free. And there's no harmful additives. So these are great for kids. These are great for adults. They're delicious. They have like this chewy consistency that is unrivaled. And their new Go Macro Kids bars, y'all, they have some flavors that are so good and so great for picky eaters. Chocolate chip cookie dough, peanut butter cup, double chocolate brownie, and oatmeal chocolate chip cookies. So this is really awesome for any kid in your life. I've obviously had them as well because, you know. But they have 15 mouth-watering flavors overall at Go Macro, and they are 100% plant-based. So this is going to fuel your body and mind. You can go to gomacro.com and use the promo code almost30 for 30% off plus free shipping on all orders over $60. I would stock up. You will not regret it. gomacro.com. Use the promo code almost30 for 30% off plus free shipping on all orders over 60. Just to stay on that, on the religious vein, but speaking to divinity and finding divinity in your sexuality and in your body. And I just think history, religion, etc., have just taught us to separate the two. And so, you know, I'm sure a lot of women are kind of reckoning with that, where it's like, oh, I can be, quote, sexual. I can be like loving my body and desiring pleasure, and also believe in a higher power, and also, engage either in religion or spirituality. I'd love to talk about kind of where that intersected for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny. There's this healer that I went to recently, and he was like, so you have this really mystical old soul, like really old soul, but you have this. And I was like, I started cracking up, and I was like, what? What do you mean? I was like, yeah, I'm a freak. I have a hungry, like sensual body.
Yes.
And he was like, well, your soul incarnated into this body because that's the lessons. You have to bridge the gap between this notion that your soul is like this, kind of like pure divine being. And you're like, have to also not let the animal in you take over, So, and that's kind of been my sort of identity, is like going through phases where I'm like super purist, and then phases where I'm just like, let the animal out. And now I'm at a phase where they're pretty integrated though, sometimes I can swing in one direction or another. But that's the spiritual path that I've chosen. And it's not necessarily one that comes with like a certain guidebook. I think that you could call it like, being connected to the earth. You could call it like shamanic. You could call it tantric. You could call it witchy. Like there are certain, all of those are like buckets or containers that some of these concepts can land in. But for me, it's not been something I've like read from a book. It's been lived experiences of like, oh, okay, I still am holding shame around my sexuality. Why is my sexuality not allowed in my relationship to God, goddess, divinity, into living, and then just tracing that backwards and going, oh, that was a choice made by a bunch of dudes.
Yep.
To say that I should be ashamed of my desire, know? So it's really helped me kind of some of the Eastern traditions and looking in general at what if all parts of me are divine and how can I move through that? Now, with that comes, there's a lot of wounding around some of these areas, right? So it's not the same thing as going, I'm going to be sexually empowered and just going to go fuck whoever I want. And that's going to be my prayer to God.
That's what the book's about, right?
And it's like, that would be kind of the opposite. That would be like taking it to the other extreme. And we see that and like in social media and out in the world. It's a certain phase where you're like reclaiming your sexuality. And it's just like, like,
everyone and anyone.
Yeah, it's just like, wow, look at me,
honestly.
Look at me. And I mean, I've like can look back at some moments in my life where I'm like, oh, that was embarrassing. That I let that, because I was in that space of like, my sexuality is mine. But when you kind of get past that phase of like, I'm going to empower myself, then you can integrate that and you can just allow for that to be a part of you that is divine and that is true and that is real without it being like, something you have to broadcast or make to be your everything. But only you know that, where you're at with that. And I think we kind of ebb and flow. There are times where I'm like, oh my God, I'm experiencing like a big sexual shame coming up. This is weird. And then I have to sit and work through that for a few weeks. And I'm like, wonder why. Okay, this person triggered this thing in me, this old shame story or whatever.
Right. I guess just on that path, I just want to unpack that a little bit so people can figure out how they would do that themselves.
Yeah.
So when that happens, so what happens is you notice someone triggering you.
Yeah. So you go on a date with someone and like you kiss them or make out with them or like start to hook up with them, but you don't feel like your heart's being held or valued, or you don't feel like you're really in like a kind of communal good intention, right? Like it's like maybe you're a little tipsy or whatever. These are very kind of rudimentary examples, but maybe you wake up the next morning and you're like, oh shit, like I'm ashamed of myself, right? Like I'm ashamed of myself. Like I just opened my body too quickly to someone without there being like my heart feeling held. And I just used sex to get connection, or wow, that's an old pattern. When did that first start? Oh, well, the first time I did that, maybe when I was 13, when I really just wanted connection and love from this guy. But I gave him sex in order to attempt to get love back. And it felt empty, right? So whatever the story is for one particular person, you can trace it back, right? So it's not necessarily about that moment. It can be, and that's a part of it, but like seeing how that lands and lives in your system and how that's maybe been something you've done for a few years or 10 years or however, and then you can begin to make a change around it. The change takes awareness first. Sometimes we repeat the shit that we do for a very long time. And we're like, oh wow, I'm doing that thing and I'm feeling this and I'm tired of feeling this.
Yeah, the shame compounds and then it gets really murky.
Yeah.
You know, you almost like it almost like creates a distance between you and yourself.
Of course,
like it's like you almost become unidentifiable. Because I think in those like physical moments with someone, I can feel so much myself. But I think over time, especially in my late teens, early 20s, like it was so many of those moments where I gave myself to that person where they really weren't open, holding me, like really saw me, felt me. And over time, like it just kind of numbed me out a little bit. And then I was like very unclear about, so who am I in these situations, in these relationships? How do I really feel? Is this normal? Like it all became very murky.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, you know, it's just the process that we all have to go through. It's just like actually noticing, I'm disconnected from my body and I'm disconnected from myself and I'm feeling guilty or I'm feeling ashamed.
I think most people spend most days disconnected from their body. Sitting in your car, in like commuting to work at your desk, on your phone. Most of what we do in this life is like not connected to your body.
I know. Well, for most of us, like living in like a Western-y kind of US world. But, you know, you can't, something that I work with, like that was really important for my journey was getting out of my head and into my body and really feeling what it's like to live in the body. And I think especially if you've had kind of a fraught relationship with your weight or your physical form, like to come in and feel your body. I didn't even know what that meant. Like, what does it mean to be in my body? Like, of course I'm in my body. I'm going to SoulCycle. Like I'm working out all the time. Like I'm in my body. But what I realized is like, could I feel the depth of my heart or my pleasure? And it took me a lot of time because it meant dropping into so many uncomfortable feelings. It's like, how many years have I been avoiding feeling everything? And if you're a deep feeler, which I think most of us actually are, then it can be completely overwhelming to be in your body. And if you've experienced any traumas, again, and you've never really dealt with them, it can be completely overwhelming to come into the body because you start feeling fight, flight, freeze, fear, guilt, shame, like just like all these things that don't exist if you sort of try to stay in the logical, analytical mind of like what I need to do and da-da-da-da. But the most glorious bliss and ecstasy and love and pleasure exists in the body. And so if we avoid the pain in our bodies, we're avoiding the deep pleasure. So to me, that's just my practice and helping women to have the courage to come back in, come back home, even if it means like, well, you might feel like real, like kind of yucky some days. And all the women that do my programs, like we say like, oh my God, I'm feeling sticky. I'm feeling crunchy. Like the days where like you wake up and like the feelings in your body are just like awful. And just learning how to move through them anyway. And not numb out.
I find it hard to do with a partner at my, you know, it's hard. It's easier to like heal in that way and feel in that way when you're not with someone. It could be as easier for some, but I find it harder for me because it's like, how do I explain this? You know what I mean? Like, what do I do to explain this to you right now
without them like laughing or being like,
or just like, even like, there's a lot of stuff I've never told anyone, you know, that's happened traumatically. And it's like, do we want to do this? You know, I just am like, oh, am I going to talk about this? But something you...
Well, but before you move on, I just want to address that. You don't have to talk about it though. It's a feeling space. So you can bring that into your lovemaking. You don't have to say as long as that man is prepared to hold you and he has some depth to his own sense of self and practice, then you can bring all of what you're feeling into the lovemaking. And it can be ecstatic and so deep and potent and powerful. So it's not even about talking about it at all. And I mean, it just means that man's got to be able to like, you're a strong, vast, robust human. You have a lot of power. And so if you really open that into the room, he's got to be able to handle it like, you know, like he's standing in a tsunami and a rainstorm and going, yeah, give it to me. You know, this is very much in the David Data work. Like that I know you guys have had John Wineland on here. So, I mean, all of that feeling in your body is actually fuel for the intimacy and for the love. It just takes a little bit of practicing how to do that. So it's not like people get kind of bowled over by it all. And even if they do, like, you're going to be okay. But like,
are there like conversations outside of the bedroom that we could be having with our partners or people that we start dating that would open both people up when they do? Because I do think, at least in my experience, the conversations out of the bedroom really help me to be turned on, like be so connected. Like there's just like a depth
for sure
there.
Yeah.
So are there ways to do that?
Yeah. And the most interesting conversation is the embodied one, is not the word one. It's you.
Yeah.
So if you're angry, it's you walking into the kitchen and like feeling the anger in your body and just like, or if you're just like super turned on, expressing it through sound, through the way you move, all of that. That's the most interesting conversation, in my opinion. It's not sitting down and being in a processing, to me.
So
oh my God,
true.
Yawn. But sometimes we have to. It's totally fine. But creating yourself as an invitation.
Yeah.
Right? So like if you're pissed, letting that move through you. There's a difference between spewing that onto your partner and letting it move through you as an opening so that they can come in and either wrap their arms around you, and then they get to feel like this powerful, sexy man, woman, human. Or, you know, like that you're just like so open that they can just come in and like penetrate you with their lovemaking. That to me that's where the magic happens. But you have to be courageous to get out of your head in that moment and to look like a freaking dummy. Because
I'm like 10 years old. I'm like literally giggling right now.
If you walk into the kitchen and you're like, say you're like really mad about something. And if you like, instead of going, God, I'm really mad about this. If you go, and he's like, what the hell? Like, how might he get to play with you there and be like, ooh, you're mad. You mad at me? And you're like, no, I'm mad at the world. And like, how might he get to then show up to you and go, yeah, how mad are you? Show me, you know, or whatever.
Yes.
Like, there's such opportunity there versus going, well, I'm really mad about the news and the current politics that are happening today.
And even you saying that, I'm like, oh, you're in your head. Like there is a quality of like, your voice when you know someone is in their head and when they're in their body.
I mean,
that's
it takes wanting to risk it for love and for
sure
art and for the magic of like fucking and intimacy. Like you have to be willing to look dumb and to make mistakes. And I really enjoy those
But
moments.
that's like also the vulnerability,
Oh,
you know,
so
with all in it.
endearing.
And that's whenever in sex, when you're doing something new or different, or you like want to explore something new, you always have that moment of vulnerability where you're like, this could be dumb. This could be risky. This could not go the way I wanted.
I could poop on you right now. I don't know.
You might say yes to pooping. You might say no.
It's very vulnerable.
You're like, are we going to do this?
It is. And tying that to your heart is so important, and to your feelings. And like, that's where the deep intimacy can happen with like two people. It's like when we're in our bodies together in the present moment.
Yeah. And when you take that risk and it's like received, it's the best. The best feeling, you know, like.
And he has the opportunity to rise and meet you, you know? And if he can't for the first few times, it's okay. Because then he's going to go, oh shit, I better start like maybe doing some breath work or meditating or doing something to increase my capacity of my nervous system to hold Krista, because she's a powerful woman. So I better get big so that, you know what I mean?
I've been thinking a lot about doing more Kundalini. I feel like I was like, I was talking about it to someone, and I'm like, for the nervous system specific only, you know, that is such a good nervous system activity. I was thinking about that. I'm like, I need to bring that back into my practice.
Yeah. And he could do it too. You guys could do it together.
Yeah. It's interesting. Justin, you know, specifically, he does have a hard time being in his body. I will notice it sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, your little brain, it's like all happening here. Like I'll just look at his face. I'm like, it's all happening here.
Yeah.
You know, and I think he has a hard time getting in his body too, because I don't know many men that are, I don't know many embodied men.
I know. And it's
John Wineland, maybe.
Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, he's devoted his life to that. And it's just new. I mean, that's why like I teach that, and you know, he teaches that, and many people are like, hey, like the fun stuff is happening in the body.
Yeah, for sure.
At our workshop that we did with you, part of that was breath work. And breath work has been really transformative for me. And, you know, even during this interview, I just noticed you really consciously taking breaths. And I think, you know, we hold our breath so much. And I'm just curious, both the science behind it and, you know, the kind of like the connection. Because when I do breath work, it's like rocket to everything I'm connected to divinity, to, you know, there's just like this clear line.
Yeah.
So I'd love to talk more about breath work, because I think a lot of people are curious but nervous about it.
Well, so I'll tell you like a little story, which is, so when I went to NYU, is where I studied primarily like art and embodiment and vocal training. And it's kind of like the basis for what I do now. My teacher was like, you're an inward breather. So you have, because you've been holding your belly in your whole life, you've learned how to breathe in the inside without moving your belly. So you can keep a flat stomach. So that was like my little girl to age 18.
Same. Yeah. I literally was like, what?
And my teacher was like, that's not going to work. You know, like you have to untrain yourself for that. If you're going to be an artist or an actor, like you have to be able to create space in your body. So one of my main healings has been allowing my belly to be soft and allowing my belly to be full of breath. And I have said in classes I teach that is a radical act as a woman, to walk around with a soft belly hanging out, because when we breathe into our belly, it actually looks pregnant, like regardless of our size. And to walk through the world with a soft belly means that there's oxygen flowing there. It means that the energy center there is soft and open and available. One of my great teachers, she said once, she said like, well, if someone punches you in the belly, what do? You like clench to prevent feeling. And so if you think about it, if we're always clenched, we're in the space of preventing feeling. If we're always tight in our belly and our abs and our lower body, think about the years of residual tension. And then we try to open for an orgasm, like real quick. It's like, well, no, I've been holding this area of my body tight. And then you add in like the part around our menstrual cycle, and like that we've held that kind of as like quiet, like don't be smelly, or like take the Advil, don't be crampy. Like, so to talk back to the breath, there is this really powerful unwinding that happens in breathing into your belly and letting your belly be soft. For me as a woman, I think that we have a very unique, intuitive portal, a response that happens in our womb, in our cervix, in the lower part of our body that we've been cut off from for so long. And that when we tense and we don't breathe there, we literally are cutting ourselves off from our source.
Yeah.
And so whether it's for orgasmic pleasure or for intuitive knowing or for just feeling life more, the breathing into the lower body and the belly for women is really, really key. And then on the sort of like more scientific level, by breathing consistently with that kind of deep openness, you stop yourself from living in like a fight, or freeze, fight, flight, freeze response in your nervous system, which it's just like survival mode, which is so many humans are living in. So, but there are humans that live in really difficult living conditions, like living conditions that we would in our Western world would be like, what the fuck? There are people that live not in fight, flight, or freeze, not in survival mode, that are experiencing joy, pleasure, and love that don't have nearly as much as we have.
Of course.
So it's not even like, okay, like this is about, that I've like transcended past this, thing. No, anybody can live in an open body, in an embodied, like feeling state of pleasure and life and love, And I love seeing cultures and people that despite trauma, despite hard conditions, are dancing and singing and are not living in this hyper survival tension mode. And I think we have a lot to learn from them, you know. So the breath is, it's the beginning, it's the bridge, it's like the thing that connects us to something bigger. It's the last thing before we leave this planet. It's the first thing when we arrive. It is this link to the divine in that way, So the practice that I lead women, and I call an embodiment practice because I use breath, sound, and movement together as like an activation tool. But there's so many different types of breath work where just breath is kind of like the basis. And that's the most important thing to get things going and to drop us out of our head and into our heart usually, or into the body, however you want to categorize it. And that's usually like where it does feel like you like just took like MDMA or like some sort of a drug and you have to let go and you have to go through this period of anxiety where your body's going, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this.
Yeah.
So I have so much like compassion when I'm leading a group of women in that space because I know that moment where you're like, I do not want to let go. And I see people and they start crying and shaking and moaning and like, but then they like afterwards are so gorgeous. Like their eyes are like shooting rainbow stars out at me. And I'm just like, oh my God.
It's like your eyes. What you did like you covered your eyes like, or no, you covered them like as in you recorded what your eyes, like the changing of your eyes.
Oh.
Do you remember that last year where you took a picture of your eyes after some healing that you did? Ceremony that you did. I love
looking at. Because I think of like eyes as being the windows to the soul,
They're like galaxies.
Yeah. And so it's like if that connects to some like, God texture, I like seeing that. Even last week, I was like feeling shame about things going on in the world and like my privilege. And my friend said, wow, I saw you in that Instagram live. You look bad.
No way. Respect.
She said, you look like there's a lot of shame, like a lot of pain in your eyes. And I was like, yeah, there's a lot of pain there. And I'm glad I was able to show up anyway. Just be like, hey guys, here I am. And I'm in pain because of everything that's happening in the world. And then to, like go be in nature this past weekend and then to be like, oh my God, look at me. I'm a new person now because I've cleaned some of that off my soul mirror,
God.
Yeah.
What is, you're here in LA, just on that, like, do you go into nature regularly or do you kind of hit a threshold? Because I've been thinking a lot about that, like kind of the residue that a city leaves on you.
When now the 5G towers are up.
Yeah, no.
I know, man. I'm getting out. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm getting out.
Who was it? Jessica Lanyadu, when we were on live the other day, she goes, let me just say, I'm not predicting anything, but just know that all of my astrologer friends are no longer living in big cities.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Yeah, I think there's going to continue to be mass exoduses. I'm just like, I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but it's going to happen for me too. I go to nature as much as I can, as much as my schedule permits. But I find that like walking barefoot, eating mushrooms, hugging trees, being naked, peeing on the earth. Like,
I like peeing on the earth.
Really
That's a good
important.
one.
Peeing in the ocean is one of my favorite things.
That's a good one.
I don't know if that's bad for the environment, but I really... There's something about it.
We'll know. We'll know.
We'll know after.
Yeah, we'll get the comments. Yeah, that's beautiful.
But I think, that's just something that we've lost in general is like the depth of like how wonderful it is to be in connection with nature. And yeah, that's where I feel the most me and the most free. But I also love art and urban environments. But I think I might have done it. I did 12 years in New York, 2 years in Seattle, 1 year in Portland, 5 years here. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, honey. It's time to relax.
Truly.
It's interesting with talking about, I'm thinking about sexuality and sex and then also religion too. And in Law of One, they talk a lot about how Yahweh was they called him Yahweh at the time, brought sexuality to humans. And even in religion, when religion was brought through many teachers and leaders, they were both distorted to be, in religion's case, what was pure and good and divine was distorted to be something that was making people separate, that had the hierarchy, that created things like the 10 Commandments with the thou shalt, which, separates us from ourselves and separates us from the divine. And then within sexuality too, it was used, it was given to Yahweh to teach the people as a tool of like radical transformation and spiritual growth. But then it was distorted in a way where now it has like the darkness at points attached to it, or like it can be distorted in a way in which it's used for power, it's used for separation, it's used for energy vampiring. There's just a lot of the distortion that's used within it. But in the Law of One, they talk a lot about that.
Yeah, I haven't read that book, but yeah, there's a shadow and a light side to everything in terms of like being in this dualistic world. And it's our like practice, it's like our martial arts training to be able to discern in those moments and to transform them, right? And to feel really deeply like, ooh, that feels not right to my body, right? Like engaging in that, practice or that movie or that person or whatever it is that is dealing with that kind of like texture around sexuality. Like to me, that will feel like EBGBs in my body. Yes. It's just like, ooh.
Yeah. Honestly, I cannot.
But sometimes it's like a drug too. So like there's definitely like, I've definitely explored darker sides of sexuality, and there's a space where we can explore, but we have to be careful we don't get kind of stuck there, and we have to bring consciousness to that space, right? So it's like, it's not for everybody, that path. I mean, I think I talk about some of that in my book also, just like different phases of my life where I've explored certain things. And sometimes I have gotten burned and I have gotten hurt by being open to exploring or to walking through the dark hallway around certain sexual things and getting stuck there for a minute and going, oh my God, I don't know how to get out of here. Metaphorically speaking. Is that path for everyone? No. Is the path of being afraid of it like better? No. So it's like,
when you say like things, what do you like? Do you mean practices or rituals or
it's like,
say it.
Where am I going to go with this?
Speak to it. Okay.
Paint a picture.
Yeah, honestly. How many people?
Well, we'll just say like, you could say, let's look at like BDSM for one thing, right? Like, so if you're like, okay, I want to explore parts of my sexual shadow or my sexual kind of like possibilities, you could go into a situation with BDSM and you could really be totally humiliated and sacrifice yourself and kind of be lured by that shadow of play, but without consciousness present or love present or intention present, right? So it's a sticky place. It's like handling fire. We have to be knowledgeable and aware enough. Otherwise, we're going to get burnt, But sometimes we become knowledgeable by getting burnt. And everyone's path is different in that way. So like, for somebody that might be going to a sex party for the first time, or, it might be telling their boyfriend like, okay, this is my desire and I want to enact this fantasy with you. And there could be in that like darkness comes up, like shame could come up, guilt could come up, fear could come up. And it's a matter of like, if there's consciousness present, like if you're not drunk and if you're in your body, then you can breathe through that stuff. And you can have a good cry if it comes up. But if you're not in your body and you're not present, then you're creating trauma for yourself. So it's like, the sex energy is like really, there's a reason that there's so much, fear and stigma and everything, because we're dealing with the most powerful energy on the planet.
Yeah.
Does it mean we just totally smush it down and shut it down? No. Does it mean we just like open it up at any given point? No. It's like, we have to be really intentional and really like, loving and careful and really elevate that energy, and then know that there will come there will come shame, there will come guilt, there will come fear, because we're not at the level of consciousness as a society where that stuff's not going to show up. So it's more of like, well, what do I do when it shows up? You know, like maybe I said to my lover, oh, I want to enact this fantasy with you. And then I ended up feeling so like gross and guilty about it. Well, I could pretend like, oh, that was fun. That was cool. Or I could like cry in his arms and go, wow, that triggered this moment where I felt like such a slut and so disgusting, and let him hold me while I cry and have an opportunity for healing. Right. So, you know, it takes courage, just like we talked about before. It takes courage to actually show up and be present in your feelings and in your body. And if you are going to open to, you know, experiencing sexuality as a part of your spiritual path or as a part of your divine nature, then you have to be prepared for those moments because of the greater healing that we're all a part of. So the healing is going to come forth in you at some point. It's not even personal. It's like for our mothers and our grandmothers and for all of everyone. And it's like not being ashamed of that and going, oh, it's so uncool that like I just had a total meltdown around that, you know, just like going like, no, that's just a part of it. And it's actually artful. And then the healing that's happening within me is actually so powerful for me, for my partner, for like the children we may have, like all of it. And I'm not going to shy away from that.
As many of you OG listeners know, Krista and I went off birth control years ago. It was the right decision for us, but we still need to keep track of our cycles. And we found Natural Cycles and have been huge fans and users ever since. Natural Cycles is the first and only FDA-cleared birth control app. It's a great alternative for women looking for a natural and effective alternative to hormonal birth control. I know a lot of you out there have been asking us questions about going off birth control. So this is how it works. There are only certain days of the month you are fertile and can get pregnant. So the app is powered by an algorithm that is able to identify your daily fertility status based on your basal body temperature. So you take your temperature every morning. It's really easy. I set it on my bedside table, take it first thing. And the basal body temperature is the body's lowest resting temperature, which is best measured, as I said, first thing in the morning, just after you've woken up. And there is a key link between fertility and body temperature. This is because right after ovulation happens in the menstrual cycle, there is a noticeable rise in basal body temperature. So once you put your temperature into the app, Natural Cycles gives you a red or green day, depending on if you're fertile and can or cannot get pregnant. It's that simple. So a green day, you are not fertile and do not need to use protection during intercourse. And red days, you are fertile and should use protection during intercourse. You can track your moods, cervical mucus, and more in the app. It's really incredible. And I've loved just like syncing with my cycle. It feels so good. Quick disclaimer, users must be over the age of 18 and the Natural Cycles does not protect against STIs. So excited to have Natural Cycles as a sponsor. And for our listeners, you can go to naturalcycles.com, use the code almost30 at checkout, and you'll get 20% off annual subscription and a free thermometer. So that's naturalcycles.com, use the code almost30 and you'll get 20% off your annual subscription and a free thermometer. If there is one mineral you should be worried about not getting enough of, it's magnesium. You've heard myself and Krista talk about magnesium a lot because it is our number one supplement in our daily routine. We love it for muscle relaxation, for sleep, digestion. Magnesium is the body's master mineral. It's powerful. There's over 300 critical reactions, including detoxification, fat metabolism, energy, even digestion is influenced by the presence of magnesium. And I really feel it. When I take it at night, in the morning, I'm really regular. It feels really good to start my day like that. But what I didn't know when researching and talking to our friends at BioOptimizers, that magnesium has been largely missing from U.S. soil since the 1950s. So it explains why it's estimated that up to 80% of the population may be deficient. So BioOptimizers really does it right. They are makers of industry-leading digestive supplements. You'll have to check out their selection. It's incredible. Their digestive enzymes are one of my favorites as well. And they have the ultimate magnesium supplement, easily the best I've ever used or experienced, with all 7 forms of this mineral. They even include trace amounts of something called monoatomic magnesium, which helps make all the other forms more bioavailable. So for our listeners who are really excited, you can go to magbreakthrough.com/almost30. That's magbreakthrough.com/almost30, and you'll get an additional 10% off from the normal package price with coupon code almost30 at checkout. You got that? So that's magbreakthrough.com/almost30, and then use the code almost30 at checkout, and you can get an additional 10% off the normal package price. My last question is around archetypes. I've been thinking a lot about it. Our friend Milana Snow, I did a session with her and we were talking about archetypes, and I'd love to just explore like why it's so important that we lean into different archetypes and what purpose they can serve as we get to know ourselves. Because I think there is so much shame around some archetypes that we hold, and some archetypes that could feel so good and nourishing to our own soul, but maybe society's like, So yeah. I'd love to talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, the way I look at it is like having a keyboard and you want to not just play one note on the keyboard, right? Like, so say in the journey of your whole lifetime, like, oh, did I just bang away at this one little key? Or did I actually like tiptoe across this whole keyboard? And did I actually play and go, oh, here, what does it sound like when I'm on an A and a C and here? And what does this deep tone sound like? And so to me, it's like a deep pleasure as a woman to be able to have this freedom to embody all these different archetypes. And then to let them move through me moment to moment, because it's not like, maybe there's a year where I'm like embodying a little bit more wild woman, and then another year where I'm embodying like a little bit more like priestess and like whatever. But the yummy part is when there's like a symphony of all of them coming together, and it's moment to moment, and you don't choose it from your head. You breathe into your belly. And that moment where you like walk into your kitchen and your lover is there, like the thing is presenting itself through you because of like the moment. That is when it's artful and gorgeous. But sometimes we need to pull these archetypes into our daily practice so we can get comfortable with them, right? So it's like the things that scare you the most, I would say, bring into your daily practice. If it's like the witch or the sacred prostitute or the hag or the crone or whatever the thing is that you're like, I don't want to be that. I would pull it into my practice and then like write about it and feel it. Like I think I told you, Lindsey, on our Instagram Live that I like did that with like the bitch archetype during this quarantine. Like, I don't know why I was feeling super bitchy one week. And I was like, why am I being such a judgmental bitch this week? And I was like, okay, just let's embrace it. Like, let's go deeper into it and just say, sometimes I'm a judgmental bitch. And like, she lives in me and she protects me when I need to be protected at times. And then sometimes she's just like cold and standoffish, And so that was just like a gorgeous practice to have with myself. And I allowed that to come forth out of the moment because I noticed I was judging someone. So I think that, we can either try to play the same note on the keyboard and do it so well that it just becomes like so common in place. And we're just like, oh, I'm Alexandra and I'm always going to be sort of funny and quirky and da-da-da-da. Or we can go, no, like I want to see what it's like to walk into a room as like the most fucking regal queen, or as like an enchantress, or like as like a trickster. And, I love Carl Jung's work in terms of archetypes. It's not necessarily around feminine archetypes, but just archetypes in general. But I think with feminine archetypes, it's like looking to the weather, looking to goddesses, looking to deities, looking to even writers or musicians or actors. Like I use all of that as my material. I might make like Pinterest boards and I'm like, I'm going to explore this archetype.
I want to
in
see
my
your
practice.
hag Pinterest board.
I know, my hidden ones. There's so many hidden. And that's where it comes into embodiment, right? So if you're on the ground on all fours, like, you know, and I'm leading you in a practice where you're like breathing and sounding, and I ask you to call forth your like fucking like, I'm going to kill you, lioness, you know, like, then that's something that then you could call forth in real life in one gaze. You don't then growl at someone in the grocery store. I mean, you could, but you just look at them with that one gaze because you've been practicing the lioness. You know how to protect yourself with that one little at them, you know? Yeah.
I just got the
Yeah.
I love that.
And this is like, I mean, this goes back to my acting training.
Right.
This also is in a lot of that polarity work that we've been talking about, that's important to me as well. And also in like the sort of feminine goddess spirituality traditions, and also in psychotherapy. So all of this lives in us as humans, in narratives and fairy tales and stories. It's just a part of who we are. And it's so fun. I think it's like magic, you know?
Yeah, that's what I loved about acting. It was like bringing out parts of myself that I didn't really get to be necessarily in the everyday. And even like I was talking to my boyfriend, he's like, well, you're like, sometimes I don't know if you're acting. And I was like, it's all me. But it's like all, like there's all different yous,
of course.
Which I think that's why there's like a little shame around it, because people are like, huh? Because they haven't accessed that within themselves.
Yeah.
So I just think we have the ability, if we access these different archetypes, to liberate each other.
Exactly. And like I was like doing a lot of like very wild women posts on Instagram, like maybe 2 years ago. And that I felt so many women liberated by that. Like, and it's funny because I feel like I integrated that part of myself. I don't need to show her off as much anymore, but like, I'm like, man, but women love it.
I fucking love that shit. That was fucking powerful. I was living for it. I'm always living for your stuff. In ceremony, are you still doing ceremony? Like, have you?
I feel like I'm good for a while.
Yeah, because you did a long bit of it.
Yeah, there was some stuff around specifically my relationship to my dad that I really had to sit with for quite a few years, which I talk about in my book, a long part of my healing journey. And in the past few years, I was like, I'm just really wanting to move through this. And so I kind of just kept going deeper into it. And it did. Like my father and I totally made peace. He didn't even have to, he just looked at me one day and was like, you have changed. And the love coming from you is just totally different than I've ever experienced. So, you know, and I used to hate him at times. So the work I did on myself transformed hatred into unconditional love and forgiveness. And it took a lot of work, I'll tell you that much. But then now we have a great relationship. And I was considering like maybe not having him in my life anymore because I just didn't think it was possible to have a healthy relationship with him. So that's like the coolest miracle that's ever happened in my whole existence of this life, is the fact that like my father and I turned so much pain and hatred into actual love. And like now he like calls me every day on FaceTime. And I'm like, okay. I'm
like not this much love.
Here's for all the years